India is one of the world's largest agricultural economies. Over the years, the country has made significant progress in agriculture, yet nearly 60% of the net sown area still depends on rainfall. This makes Indian agriculture largely rain-fed. Climate variability and climate change continue to affect agricultural growth. More than 80% of Indian farmers own small and marginal landholdings, making them especially vulnerable to these changes. Diminishing glaciers, rising sea levels, and increasing greenhouse gas concentrations are also affecting agricultural productivity and crop yields, all of which make sustainable agriculture vital for the country's food, nutrition, and livelihood security. As part of the Bengaluru 2040 series, a group of eminent panelists join us today to discuss how smart tech and innovations can be harnessed for sustainable agriculture through improved soil health and water use efficiency, and the concept of farmers' collectives that is fast gaining traction in India. Our panelists for the discussions include Simon V. Bush. He's the CEO of Bayer Crop Sciences Limited, and he heads this division in South Asia. Simon is a strong advocate for sustainable and regenerative agriculture. Also joining us is Dr. Purtha GT. He's Director, Department of Agriculture, Karnataka. Dr. Putra has worked extensively with the Karnataka government at various levels and roles, with a strong focus on farmer training. Also joining us today is Dr. M.S. Sheshai. He is Professor Emeritus, University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore. He is one of the leading voices in agriculture research and a strong focus on crop adaptation to droughts. And lastly, from the industry, we have Rashmit Singh Sukhmani. He is founder and Chief Technology Officer of Satshore, a Bangalore-based company that provides raw data into actionable intelligence. I'll start this conversation with Professor Sheshaji. There's this lot of talk about climatic changes, global temperatures rising, it's affecting the crop yield. From an academic point of view, what exactly are we looking at?
Thank you, Subit, and thank you very much for inviting. It's a very interesting and an important debate to have for sure. When it comes to this climate change, or the global climate change, which we call, there are two sides to this. One is people, some certain people, especially the political groups, they don't believe that there is any climate change. But from the science point of view, we for certainly know that there is a change, and it's really, and it's going to impact significantly the agricultural sciences, agriculture even in the practice for sure, from two reasons. One is the resources that are available for agriculture, and one of the most important thing, as we all know, is water. And water is going to become limiting, close to 1.5 billion mouths to feed, and the resources that we have has exactly remained the same when the population was much less than what we have today. And that means we have to have the same amount or perhaps less, because the water is being used for industry, for domestic purposes, civic reasons. And the one thing that is going to affect is the water that is available for agriculture will always come down. It is something like, it used to be 80% water used for agriculture in terms of irrigation during, let's say, 80s and all that, 1980s. But now it has come down to something like 70%. In another 20, 30 years, the amount of water available for agriculture perhaps can become something less than 50%. Out of the total amount of water that we have, available for agriculture will be only this much. This is because of two reasons: industrial requirement and the civic purpose. This has got nothing to do with the climate change. Now the climate change issue comes, rainfall. We are getting either torrential rains or extended periods of no rain at all. So this is typically a situation that is happening in the tropical regions. Drought, there is always some kind of a periodicity that we have. We define drought as some period of rainless time, which is where the water availability is less than what the potential evapotranspiration requirements are. But that was something like 6 or 7 years in the last decade or 2 decades ago. Now it has come down to something like 3 to 5 years. And we have data to show that there is so much of data in terms of all the reservoir, when the capacity fills up, when it becomes less, there is a periodicity, and that is coming down, which means rainfall is getting affected. Rainfall is not enough, or it is erratic. And the other more important factor that is going to affect agriculture is the temperature that is increasing. High temperature, especially high nighttime temperature, is certainly going to cause a reproductive, loss of reproductive success in plants. And that means the grains or fruits or anything, whether it is horticulture or agriculture crops, they get affected. That means we need to have two things in this. A, we need to maintain the resources and how the resources can be utilized. And the second thing is, how is it that we can possibly develop varieties or cultivars which are resilient to these changes. And there's a tremendous amount of effort going on.
I will come to that. If Dr. Putra, you have been working very closely with the agriculture department in various capacities. So if one were to talk from the government's perspective, last 2 decades in Karnataka in particular, if you were to look at it, do you see a very perceptible impact of the global climate change in Karnataka agriculture?
Yeah, as you know.
And there is a quantifiable data to underscore
there is a quantifiable data to back that claim also. If you take last, first of all, Karnataka, as you know, Karnataka is the most drought vulnerable state after next only to Rajasthan. So if you take past 20 years, almost 15 years we have faced this drought. And if you take past 10 years, only 2 years were there in which there was either no flood or no drought. So Karnataka is very vulnerable to drought. There are many data to back that also. So we have been facing this drought or flood. As he rightly said, like torrential rain within a short span of time.
We had hailstorm, I think.
We had hailstorm recently. So the overall average rainfall, if you see that, you will not appreciate that much. But the distribution has been very erratic. So that we have been experiencing.
That has affected the yield?
That has affected the yield, everything, like and production also and productivity also. And depending on the, there are many crops which are unable to sustain this kind of flood and drought.
Let me bring in Simon now. Simon, Bayer has been working with various organizations independently and with other organizations also in India and abroad. Water conservation, and containing greenhouse gases, that has been one of the areas, niche areas, I think the Bayer is looking into. So would you want to tell us something about it, especially when we hear about these carbon crediting, it's something that we hear that it's being used to mitigate the greenhouse emissions, also in terms of conserving water. But for a layman, when one hears that, it seems a little, it's like space rocket science that, how can, carbon credits be created by farmers, How does it work actually, and how's Bayer, looking into it?
Thank you for the question. It's a complicated question. I'll try to give you a reasonably simple answer, but let me first of all also try to give it a little bit of a positive spin, right? I'm in my 8th year in this country, and it's probably the 3rd time now that I hear the monsoons are more erratic than our generations can remember, etc. But one thing which is really in favor of India is that we have several agroclimatic zones, right? This country is probably in that sense a bit more resilient than a smaller country which already is more arid. So I'd like us to keep that in mind. The other thing is, in many ways, India has a lot of potential to optimize, right? And now let's get a bit closer to it. We have 44 to 50 million hectares of rice, which is the most water guzzling crop in the world. And there is ways and means to grow rice much more water efficiently, right? And that is where direct seeded rice comes in, where you can save 40 to 50% of water, where you can, via the whole system, increase yields. And when you grow rice in a dry environment, it doesn't emit methane, what it does in the flooded environment. And methane is actually 20x times as much a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide, which is usually being talked about. So if you change from transplanted puddled rice to direct seeded rice, you actually significantly reduce the methane emissions of rice while saving a lot of water, and that can be carbon credited. And that is how you generate carbon credits, which I personally see a little bit the icing on the cake. Labor savings, water savings, better yields, shorter duration, that's what is really in it for the farmer. But in the end of it, if you even get carbon credits where the farmer can get benefits out of that as well, that makes it really interesting.
Rashmit, if I could come to you, your startup, the tagline as I was reading it, that it claims that it's a digital dictionary of the living earth. So when you talk about things that you preempt crop risk, how does it actually work, for a company like yours, which provides, which you are sitting on data, you're sitting on information, how does it translate into the actionable intelligence or information? If you can, just explain.
Sure. First, let me touch on the crop, the dictionary aspect, right? Earth is changing very dynamically. Every time some or the other changes that are happening, right? Whether it's your agriculture, forest, water, etc., etc. Now, when we talk about a dictionary, it's not just about you're trying to understand what the change has happened and what has led to. Okay, so that's the actual meaning of a dictionary, because the dictionary meaning, it's more like a decision that you're giving it to someone to help them to make a better, I would say, the decisions out of it, right? It's more like an intelligence that you provide. Now coming to, that's the beauty of Earth observation. I think from past 20-30 years, we have immense amount of payload that are there in the space. Now, what the data is actually helping the society for. Now, when it comes to the risk, it gives you an ability to go back in the history. Okay, it's not like a single timestamp image or what you take from your natural phone, right? It's beyond that. The information density is way higher, right, in terms of the reflectance, where satellite data provides the ability to actually understand what's the chemical composition of each of the crop is. They have different aspects to that, right? Shortwave or whatever you want to call it out, those electromagnetic spectrum. So you use all this information to understand, first of all, what was my cropping behavior in a region, right? What type of crop it was, for what crop management practices. And Simon actually, I would say, nailed it in terms of agroclimatic zones, right? India has like 15 agroclimatic zones and more than 130 sub-agroclimatic zones. So it's very important to understand how the changes have happened, right? That's where the risk comes into picture in terms of like what was the pattern, what got changed, what was the impact, and what were the influential factor, both man-made as well as natural.
Okay, but when you're talking about the information, how deep can you go? If you're talking about a country where majority of the farmers would be small and marginal farmers, So under those circumstances, how is that information, how specific is that information, and how useful is that information for a particular farmer? How do you look at that?
See, Earth observation is not a magic pill, trust me. It's more applicable for large area analytics, like when you monitor a large area, this is where. But your information is at a pixel level, right? Every pixel denotes a latitude, longitude on a ground. Okay, now that has to be connected to a ground technology, meaning your IoT sensor, the ground agriculture initiatives that are happening on the ground. So it's a combination of both which has to complement each other. Now, how we are doing it is more in terms of first monitoring aspect, which is really important, right? First aspect was understanding the risk. The other aspect was monitoring what the portfolio belongs to and what was the risk as such. So when you combine everything, giving your basic intelligence, starting from your cropping pattern, yield, etc., etc., what satellite data provides you is the ability to look and forecast things, which is very important, than going on a ground, doing the survey, which is a time-consuming thing. That gives you an ability to preempt things. And this is where I said the risk mitigation and preempting things, that's one of the beauty of Earth observation that brings to for the agriculture.
Professor Sheshashai, you have done some cutting edge research on, especially on drought conditions and how the seeds and the plants evolved to that. So, particularly in Karnataka, what have been your observations and what does it indicate towards, what are the evolutions that we are looking at in the decades ahead and what are the mitigating factors that we have to factor in, consider?
Yeah, like I said before, there are two things that we need to look at. One is how is it that we can conserve the resources, and how is it that we can develop a crop variety which can be resilient to whatever resource limiting conditions are. Now the second question is what I have been doing, though what he was saying is the satellite images are interesting for sure, but when you practice precision agriculture, it needs to be at that point of time, this plant doesn't have nutrition, this plant doesn't have sufficient water, this plant is being eaten away by some insect or disease. So we need to go to that level. But what we are trying to do is to help the AI driven precision agriculture to develop a large amount of data, such as create the stress and capture the images. Millions of photographs can be taken these days, and then that should be used for training the cameras, which will now predict what's going to happen to complement what they are doing at the high level. Then the other question that you asked is how is it that we can address the question of drought in the future. What we are trying to talk about is that breeding has been one of the major ways by which the crop varieties were developed, and all the companies have been doing crop breeding and new varieties are released. This is based only on yield in a particular target environment. That's correct, because that was a time when that strategy was important, because people were not having enough food at all. But nowadays it's not that way. We have a little more luxury than what it used to be 20, 30 years ago. So we need to look at more specifically what causes the yield to come up, not a casual one, but a causal one. This cause effect kind of thing is what we are trying to do. We are trying to understand at the plant physiological level what are the reasons or how the plant can develop resistance or resilience when they face the
in your paper, I was reading there were two particular, one varieties that you have experimented. There were a couple of pilot projects that you have done.
Right.
And that has given some idea of how it works.
Very recently we did this. We developed a rice variety which we call Daksha. Daksha in Sanskrit it is meaning efficient. So it is water use efficient, and that particular plant requires 50% less water, like Simon was talking about. And what we did was we demonstrated that in about 5-6 different farmers' fields in Mandya. Mandya, we took that because Mandya is being fed by the canal, by the Krishnaraj Sagar dam, and that water that flows down by gravity is what is being used for irrigating that place. So we have 3 different places in that command area. Head reach is very close to the reservoir. There is so much water that is very difficult to control that. But mid-reach, little far from there, Maddur and Mandya districts, and then taluks, and then we come to another place little called the tail end or the tail reach areas. They don't get so much water, they don't get it in time, but the cropping period remains exactly the same. We take up the monsoon crop during July or June, July, and then the summer during January, February, whether water is there or not. But if the water does not reach them, they will suffer. One of the ways that we tried to do was to demonstrate to them in the mid-reach that you can grow rice with less water. He was talking about the alternate wetting and drying or dry direct seeded. We call it as semi-irrigated aerobic cultivation, which is very similar, like surface irrigation. Never it is saturated. You walk in the rice field, come back and your feet doesn't accumulate any mud and nothing. It's like growing like any other upland crop. Less water, but yield potential, we convince the farmer that it is almost 80 to 85% of what he would have got if he had irrigated it. Now the advantage is, if you did that in rice, we have done that one variety, it needs to be upscaled, like many other areas, more demonstrations, more such varieties can be developed more quickly, because we have all the genomic tools nowadays to now hasten or what we call as accelerate the breeding process. So what I can see for the future, in the next 10 years, water is going to be much less. Like you said yourself, you want to know what is the population that we have in India after the census is done. But if it is hungry people, and if they are capable of buying, are we ready to produce that much? So what we look at least is, Putra and I have been discussing about this for a very long time now, and what we need to do in the future is to work together because the Department of Agriculture and the University of Agricultural Science and the startups and the industry that we have been working in silos. In the next few years,
India, that's one of the issues that we face.
Yeah, when we talk about it everywhere.
They don't dovetail actually, the industry and the
exactly.
academy.
So that needs to happen for sure. Otherwise, any individual alone, buyer alone, or a department alone, or industry alone, or university alone can do nothing for sure. If it has to happen, then we need to work together.
Simon, your experiences, you have been working in Karnataka also, Dr. Putra also has a domain knowledge in Karnataka. So when we talk about, these methods, alternative methods of rather than transplanting, not creating a puddle, farmers, there is research to show that, the consumption of water, insecticides, pesticides is good, and the farmer tends to gain out of it, and then productivity increases. But when you're talking about creating carbon credits also, does that also, in some way helps the farmer? Does that money also goes to the farmer, a portion of it, when you're creating the credits?
That's exactly the idea. But that's why I call it the icing on the cake, right? The topic, I would argue, and I agree that we sometimes work too much in silos, is we need a concerted effort to scale. Yeah? All of us know how to do it better, but none of us does it in large enough a pilot, if I may call it even, that you can convince people to really move over, right? And that is where, to me, we're literally at an inflection point, right? When you just listen to the discussions we had, we're talking about AI, we're talking about faster breeding, we're talking about satellites, we're talking about thousands of pictures. We wouldn't have been talking about this probably even half a decade ago, let alone a decade ago, right? And it's really interesting. Anybody who's been at the AI Summit in Delhi also, there was a lot of discussion of equitable access. India actually is in a phase where all of a sudden technology is equitably accessible. Yeah? And we have the opportunity to use it. The thing now is to take that leap of faith and really move forward. And when you look at direct seeding of rice, and I'll put my neck out now, but I fundamentally believe we could at least grow as much rice as we do today on half the hectares that we use today. And if we were to do that at half the water consumption, and 70% lower methane emissions, that is scale in a country like India. This is not a backyard type thing. That really changes something even in terms of global GHG emissions. And I think this is the time now where we all need to get together, where you take satellite imagery, where you use drone technology to be on time, as you say, right? And really start moving forward. And it is all needed. If I want to generate carbon credits which are marketable, I need satellite data. I need traceability. I need to have trail of evidence that farmers are following the concept. I need to at times measure also to make sure that what we say is true, because carbon credits is an international standard. This is not something where you can just put your thumb up in the air, right? And that is where, to me, there's so much good coming together, and it includes also breeding specifically for rice that can deal in an environment which is not the traditional puddled environment. But we have it all. It's now time to come together and do it.
No, but what are the challenges? You have been doing it in India. There have been governments in North India, Punjab, for instance, and Haryana. They are incentivizing farmers to use the alternative methods. They are incentivizing farmers for diversification of crops, right. Also creating carbon credits. Now, you work with the farmers on the field, on the ground. So what are the challenges when you're talking about, dovetailing the efforts? What are the challenges as far as the industry is concerned that you see, that you face, and probably, those issues can be, probably dealt with?
Do you like sugary snacks?
Well, I can have it.
Yeah. The thing is, we all know certain things. We have done it over, and especially with rice drawing, we've done it over generations. My grandfather has done it this way, right? No, I want to do it differently. He's going to sit on the side of the field and tell me, don't do it, right? There's cultural aspects to it. We all know what a rice field looks like in India. Now, all of a sudden, one farmer grows the field differently, it's not puddled. Everybody's going to look at you and say, what's wrong with you, right? So that's the topic. The other one is, it's not easy. It takes discipline. If you want to grow rice in a mechanically dry, direct seeded way, you need to be very, very precise at using your herbicides. Yeah? If you just miss the window, you're going to have major issues with weeds, and you're going to have yield losses. Now, the problem with farmers isn't fully understood because there is a lot of risk involved, and we were talking about risk. Once bitten, twice shy. I do it wrong once, I'm not going to go back because, you know what, I've lost half a year. I've lost one harvest. And that is where, again, concerted efforts need to come in. One needs to handhold. You need universities to come along and say, we want to do this. Yes, you need governments to incentivize, but they need to follow through. It's not enough to sit here and say, hey, I'll give you a subsidy for starting direct seeded rice. A week later, I plow it and I flood it, have the subsidy and do it the old way, right? So that's the type of things where really it needs concerted effort, it needs the understanding, it needs academia, it needs government,
yeah,
and it needs literally industry to go forward, and not least the farmer. But you know what? Partially, we've seen what we've all experienced in the last couple of years help. Biggest help, COVID. Yeah? Labor shortage in agriculture is real and has become so visible post-COVID that farmers are ready to try something new because they simply don't have access to affordable labor. And that is the biggest catalyst for getting farmers to move into dry, direct seeded rice. Because while we all know the sustainability benefits, the farmer usually doesn't do something for sustainability. She does it when it's better for her and it's easy for her to understand. So the topic of labor is probably the one which is the strongest convincing factor, as long as water is still for free.
I'll come to you, Dr. Sheshai, once.
If I can add to this paddy, because we are speaking a lot about paddy. Government these days, they have understood the significance of people coming together from, farmers and industries and all. So in this present budget, we have come out with a budget announcement wherein we will be encouraging this alternate wetting and drying in paddy. So last year we had entered into a MOU with one particular organization, JPAL, for this particular aspect, alternate wetting and drying. We have carried out some experiments in central part of our state, and the results are encouraging. The only thing is we have to capture this alternate wetting and drying through some intervention, maybe like with satellite imagery. They have tried already, and it has to be made sure by ground truthing also. So if we come out with a foolproof mechanism, then there is one system like incentivizing, not incentivizing, blanket incentivizing will not help. It should be payment for ecosystem. So if we can capture this alternate wetting and drying, these cycles and all through some satellite imagery in a very objective way, then this payment for ecosystem will come in, and that will encourage the farmers. Last year, we have experienced that lot of farmers, we had this particular component, and also we had this control wherein the farmers were not doing this one. So since we incentivize the farmers who are doing this particular alternate and wetting, so the other farmers, they are encouraged to do this one, and also the results are there for everybody to see. They got good yield with almost 30 to 40% less water.
You want to
going forward, continuing what they both have been talking about, when you do the alternate wetting and drying, I call it as semi-irrigated aerobic cultivation. Basically both are same, you save more water in less irrigation situations. The biggest problem is the weed infestation, and people therefore have to use herbicide or manual weeding, which is difficult, which is not possible at all because the labor is very, very costly. So what we did towards that was two strategies. One is we have a genome editing project which is funded by Government of India, and the variety that we developed for that particular ecosystem of alternate wetting and drying, which I called it as Daksha. We have edited the herbicide, two herbicides we have identified. One is Imazethapir, is a pre-emergent herbicide, and glyphosate, which Monsanto Bayer have they have huge experience on this. That was something that is a non-selective broad spectrum herbicide. So one gene we can edit called EPSPS, ethylene enol pyruvate phosphate shikimate synthase gene. That gene is very well characterized, everybody knows. So a little editing of that makes the rice plant resistant to herbicide. So you spray glyphosate, the weed dies, nothing happens to the crop. So this is number one. What we did very more, that is again transgenics, and therefore India has its own problem, we cannot do that at all. But genome editing is little tweaking, it is acceptable, and we have already developed that part of it in some stage of testing. But what we did, another thing was, in another program, we had developed a mutant line, rice mutants created by a chemical called ethane methyl sulfonate, EMS. This induces single nucleotide variations in the genome, and by chance we identified one such mutant which is resistant to imazathapir, and that particular line we have purified and we have kept it, and the entire country is using for their breeding aspects, and we call that particular donor line as Robin. Robin named after the scientist who identified that in Tamil Nadu Agricultural University in a consortium when we had that project. And that Robin, which has a mutation in some allele which gives resistance to imazathapir, we have crossed it with Daksha and developed herbicide resistant aerobic worthy rice varieties. So that means there are certain things which are going on. Now the question is upscaling it. I mean, somehow in the universities we are not very comfortable working with industry. One of the concepts that everybody says is they take the money, they take the credit, and we die here. I said, doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm very clear about such a thing, because whether somebody makes money, but the farmer is dying anyway. But if you don't want that to happen, who cares, who takes the credit, what does it matter? It does not matter. And I can actually try and work with, I told you that we work with Ankur Seeds, a company in Nagpur, with whom we have been working on many things. And these are the ways, but in what he was talking about, 40 million hectares of rice. And every hectare requires about 40 kgs of seed material. 40 into 40 million kgs of rice is needed every year to plant, every season. That much of seed is necessary in the country. So we can, we can give it to 10 different companies to do this. But this particular mindset, that is something that we are talking about, the future smart way of doing things, is to start working together today.
Rashmit, if I can bring you in, you were talking about this project which has been taken up by the IIT Ropar, I think, about data collection. Yeah, Rohtak, I think. It's a huge project. Can you tell us something about, this entire project that you were discussing, how effective it could be in dealing in collecting data and, creating useful information. And then also, one of your projects has been in Rajasthan. This was, I think, regarding the mustard crop and the mustard oil output. Yes. I think you helped a certain consortium make an evaluation. If you can just, let us know how the technology was used there and was useful in doing that.
See, personally, I don't come from agriculture background. Yeah. I think some of the
Even
things I'm also learning new here, right? But one thing, what we have understood, okay, and that we do have resources, funds, etc., but we don't have a mechanism to disperse it at the right time. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. That's one. Second is, central government is now taking a lot of initiatives to bring all the set of data together to structure it. Not because it's a fancy thing to do, but more in terms of there are a lot of good startups, like Simon was talking about India AI Summit. We've also been part of that, right? The technology is there, but you don't have a data to apply that. So what IIT Rohtak is right now doing is they're collecting the ground truth data, right, from the ground, meaning your normal photographs tagged to a location and identify what type of crop it is, if there is a stress, what type of stress it is, right? We have been talking about pest model, we are talking about crop yield model, etc. But at the end of the day, it's an AI. Humans are not going to go and identify that. You have to train your model. We don't have that centralized repository. And this is where one of the initiative what they have taken is to generate that ground truth data at scale, not just restricted to Haryana, Himachal, but throughout the India. And I think it's almost done, and he can also resonate to that, because that data, what they're doing, one of the good things that's going to come out is that they want to make it open source, distribute it to the industry, distribute it to the academic institutions to build analytics on top of it. Now coming to your other question, right? Mustard, as you rightly said, it's an edible oil, and I think most of us use it in our day-to-day cooking as well, right? What we wanted to empower them is that, can we give them the timely intervention by using Earth observation data, satellite data, right? What was the production, how much the crop acreage has increased from last 2-3 years, right? These are all very, it may sound small, but these are very crucial indicators in terms of to do better planning, to understand how the things would change, what was the impact on the yield, how much was the production, right? It's more from the forecasting kind of a thing. Now, coming back to the first point what I made, right? The surveys, right? We do have limited resource when it comes to the manpower, and you're bang on that, right? We don't have enough people to cover the agriculture, and India is one of the biggest dependency is agriculture, and it will never go. Trust me. Whether no matter what technology we are going to use, how fancy we want to become, but agriculture will be an important sector, and I think we need to nurture that. And what we are doing from our end is, definitely we come from industry, right? But at the end of the day, we want to empower the institutions who are making those decisions at the right time, at the right way, right? And this is what one of the initiatives that we wanted to have, that how well we can give them those estimates at the right time, so that they can plan better the resources and have a timely intervention if needed. Because at the end of the day, we are doing it for the farmer, right? And the other way, what you can do, rather than working with each and every farmer, is empower the institutions. I think that's the whole fundamental at which we started a journey in Satcher.
Okay. Simon, one of the other interventions which we are looking at probably, especially in India, India has had a history of, farmers collective, but in a very different way, cooperatives, it's a long-standing thing. But then over the last 2 decades, we have seen that government has intervened to tweak this entire model, what we call the FPOs, coming up. What has been your experience? How do you look at it, the farmers collective? And over the last 10 years, there have been FPOs which have come up across the country, in Maharashtra, also Karnataka. What has been the experience? How do you look at this entire experiment?
I'd like to turn this around a little bit, and that is, we are a country of today probably 140 million farmers who on average own 1 hectare of land. Let's put it. But fact is that culturally, the ownership is actually further atomizing. And that's very, very different to other countries, right? And a little bit, as there was just the statement that also in 2047, agriculture is going to be very, very important in India, I fundamentally believe this is not changing. So you need to start from the assumption that atomized land ownership will continue to be a fact in India. Having said that, consolidating farming is absolutely essential, because otherwise you will not be able to feed 1.7 billion people nutritiously in 2047. And the only way that I have seen and that I believe has merit in India is FPOs, right? So whether we have data on 1 great FPO and 10,000 which allegedly don't work, it actually doesn't matter. If you want to use satellite data sensibly, you need to have an FPO. You need to have a collective of farmers. If you want to have localized food processing, because everything that we see in India, right? Centralized food processing in one area and then driving from Odisha to that area is not going to happen. It doesn't matter how many trains we have, it's not going to happen, especially not in an environment where potentially heat will be even higher. That means you need ultra localized processing. We are the least mechanized farming ecosystem in the world, barring countries which we don't measure ourselves against. We produce the most tractors in the world, but the per farm tractor usage is the lowest in the world. Yeah? Again, measuring us against countries we would measure ourselves against. And that is where collectivization comes in and must come in. It is not sensible for one farmer to own a drone. It becomes sensible for an FPO to own a drone, to buy satellite data or get satellite data, know what my fields are, understand what is the soil topography, the health of the soil, but also be able to monitor time-wise with drones, to have machines that will allow me to seed, dry direct seeded rice if you like, right? To understand, is water available, because AWD is halfway to where I would say we need to go, but it also means you need to have water available at the time when you need to wet it. And if that's not the case, you have an issue as well, right? So to a certain degree, this whole topic of using everything that is available today in terms of what we spoke about, digital data, yeah, that can only happen if we start seriously collectivizing the management of farming in our country. And that needs government. But you know what we need to see again is positive for us is demographics are in our favor. Yeah? We have parts of the country, especially down here south, where literally none of the fields are being farmed by the owners. Yeah? So the moment you see also the first stepping in of I lease a field, I don't just lease one field, I lease 2, 3, right? So we have a little bit of collectivization happening simply through leasing a farm, but the real collectivization comes in when you have an FPO, which is very clear at what they grow. The right grading, the right quality, the right traceability, the right tradability, ideally with then a localized processing which allows me to feed the nation and potentially export.
Dr. Putra, you were talking earlier about some of the interventions which the Karnataka is looking at, especially in terms of collectivization. Is that part of the larger outlook that the state has as far as the agriculture is concerned?
Yeah, this as rightly mentioned by Simon, this FPO is all the more relevant in our state, like I mean in the entire country, because as you know, like more than 80% of our farmers are small and marginal farmers. So in terms of I mean everything, the bargaining power is very less. So there is a need for the farmers to come together. But the important thing is like how it is, I mean how it is managed and how it is supported. The thing is like hand-holding and awareness among the FPOs and its members is the most important thing, because initially when they form these FPOs, there will be a lot of support from the government in terms of incentives, in terms of seed money, in terms of all the hand-holding and all. And once they get registered under, if they get registered under Companies Act and all, I mean as you know, there is a lot of compliance to be done. So I mean once this support system goes, so you should empower them in such a way that it should sustain itself. Then only the FPO can really prosper. So this is the one key area where we want to empower the FPOs, members, CEO or whoever may be. That is one thing. And another thing is like I mean, of late government in terms of this marketing, branding or packaging, processing and all, we are giving lot of importance to FPOs. We have like lot of schemes from both from central government and state government, and we have exclusive many schemes from the state government where we not only fund them, but we also train them on how to do this branding, how to do this marketing, processing and all, because they, I mean, if they want to compete with some of the best brands, so it should be, I mean, appealing, it should be appealing to the consumers. The appearance is all the more important, labeling is important. In this way we are also doing. And when it comes to this is output marketing or something like that, and also they do lot of input business also, like now they are into this fertilizer, pesticide, seed business and all, and we give them license, we train them and we handhold them to some extent, and we have government of Karnataka, we have federated them into a big federation also, and that is one key thing government of Karnataka is doing.
So one thing, when we are talking about the collectivization, one of the issues I think is how the government prepares the farmers in terms of the land revenue records, the records, whether they are clear, that's the administrative aspect of it, unless until if there is a dispute, and there has been, cases where a lot of disputes exist as far as the ownerships is concerned, consolidation of land is concerned, these are very critical factors which affect the collectivization of agriculture. So, in terms of administration, is it something that the government is looking into, and have you been making an effort into it?
No, as far as Simon,
digitalization of records.
Yeah, that is there.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to, as far as I will just mention this leasing of land. Leasing of land in Karnataka is not recognized. So it is against the policy of the land only in Karnataka. I am not speaking about
sharecropping.
Sharecropping and all they can do, but leasing is not done here. They can do the other like contract farming and all. It's there. I mean, many companies like they are into this gherkin business and all. They are doing this contract farming and all. And when it comes to digitalization, this one I want to just highlight. So Karnataka is the first state who have digitized the entire land records of the state. So we have a very good farmer registry, and we have given each and every farmer a farmer ID, and we have crop registry and we have land registry. So we are using this particular, Government of Karnataka and Department of Agriculture, they have planning to come out with a integrated call center or AI driven call center or whatever you may call that. So we want to give integrate all these data, not only this farm, as of now we have this farmer, crop and land. So we want to integrate this with weather data, market, and we have this pest monitoring data, we have soil data, fertility data and all. So we want to integrate all the data, and we can go to a position wherein we can give customized agro advisories to a particular farmer. The moment a farmer calls from a particular number, so if it is registered with his FID, we know that he is calling from this particular place, this particular village. This was the past 3 years crop which he was growing, and also then looking at the other data, we can give a tailor-made customized agro advisory to the farmer. This is the vision of the government.
Professor Shesha, you were what's your view on the collectivization of
before you asked, I was thinking about answering that, this collectivization is important. There's one thing that I notice is the small holding farmers that we have has a fence all around his place, and that takes away about 10 to 15% of the land. If I remove it, it's impossible in Indian situation because the fight is between brothers. It is, I believe, some person was talking about it. We don't fight with friends, we fight with our siblings. There's a DNA problem, that is. So now what is happening is with the kind of data that we have with the satellites, and if we can convince these farmers your land is not going to go anywhere, but we can collectivize this, remove the fence between you, and I will give you a digital diagram of this. Then the whole lot of things becomes one big plot. Then not necessarily the farmer's field, but we can really plan to grow crops. Like for example, in let's say 100 farmers together, each of them will have 1 acre. So 100 acres you can easily manage. All the mechanization can be done, and the harvesting can be done. Everything, marketing, all things can be done. This is utopian kind of a feeling. But is it possible to do? I'm not very sure. But I think these days, with a little bit of understanding that the people have on all this kind of media, social media and things like that, I think they can be told very slowly, but we need to demonstrate. There is one person who studied with us in our college. He did his PhD in Canada, and now he has come back somewhere in northern part of Karnataka, some Dharwad or somewhere. He has leased with the farmers, some 100 or 150 farmers, each of them have 2-3 acres. So he is managing about 250 acres of land, and he says every farmer, he gives them at least 5 to 7 lakhs every year. That is 4 times more than what they were getting. And therefore, this is possible. And there is one more thing that Simon was telling about, which we thought some years back, Karnataka government had started a program called Oil Palm Demonstration Project. If you remember, that is called the OPDP. We used to call some people as OPDPs. This was uprooted because it was fantastic. Oil palm, I think India imports almost 60-70% of our edible oil, though mustard he was talking about is grown here, we import a lot of oil from Malaysia, especially this palm oil. Why not grow in India? They did it, but the problem was they all uprooted it. The reason was that after the bunch is cut, within 24 hours they had to extract it. Otherwise, the moment the cut is made, the bunch is cut, a epoxidase enzyme activity increases, reduces the oil content by 50% in 20 hours. So that means you had to take it like he said. You would bring it from Rajasthan to Bengaluru and all, that is absolutely not going to work. Why not have these processing units in the village?
Right there.
I do not know why we did not think about it. This was some 15-20 years ago. But if we plan something like that today, I am very, very sure these things can work. So therefore, there are two things that we have been talking about, incentivization and this collectivization. Both of them are important and they are the way forward. I very strongly believe that. And
no, I think just to add on that, Sumit, I feel that our biggest pain point in Indian agriculture is your land record. Trust me. Till now, I think only 11 states have completely digitized the land holdings, not every. And that roughly covers around like 90% of the agriculture, but there's still 10%. And the biggest problem is that we don't even have a mechanism where to update those records. Forget about, first one would be the generation of it, and second one would be updation of it, right? If you go to UP or any other place, a lot of mutations are happening. We never know, as in how that land was broken into how many parts, who is the owner of it.
And consolidation later.
Consolidation is another one, and the biggest problem in India is the tenant farming, right? We don't have enough evidence and a traceability of it, right? That's one of the biggest challenge, and I feel that once we nail that particular thing down, rest of the things would follow. That's our biggest problem as of now.
but what's the solution? It's something like we say this. Our parents said you study well, but nobody told us how to study well. We need to sort of look at this problem, but how? What is the way out? Like the fragmentation, they taught us in agriculture school, the first economic course that we had, they said the biggest problem in India is land fragmentation. I have 2 sons, I divide my land, and each of my sons have two children, so it will become such place where you can be buried, that's all. Is that correct? Now, how do you change that mindset?
So how does the government look at it?
Impossible. If the government talks about it, the government will fall down.
See, it's not just the government's problem. I think there are a lot of good companies now coming up who are actually looking at this problem. The problem is that there's no consolidation of those things are happening at a rate at what we want, right? There are a lot of initiatives by central government, state government as such, but not at the rate how we want it.
Average land holding, if I can add to this fragmentation thing, the average land holding is 1.36 hectare as of now per farmer. Okay. So the economies of scale is against him. To do all this smart agriculture, mechanization, everything and all, because the average land holding is 1.36 hectare.
Okay.
He is in a better position to appreciate, because in his place and all, it is hectares together, thousands hectares here.
But the thing is, this problem is not unique to India, right? When you look at everything which, from a European perspective, we would have called the Iron Curtain, right? When the Iron Curtain fell, there were no land records in ex-Yugoslavia and whatever, right? The thing is, it takes one political decision. You can today, during every kharif, very easily say, and this is where fields are demarcated, right? It's not difficult to do at all because of the fences, etc. The thing is, are we at a phase yet where the Indian government will take that call and say, this is the day? 1st of January 2047, just to be outside of anybody's active career still. That's the date. We will take one picture of the country, and this is our land catasta. This is the facts that are given, whether you like it or not.
But that's a very politically sensitive.
I know it is. I know it is.
Simon, the moment they made our states linguistic, all ends.
But
they
look
didn't made an administrative state in India. They are linguistic states. So which makes me to fight with Tamil Nadu.
I completely get it. But, right? Let us go back to where we stand today. We're literally looking at a kharif season where we're not sure whether there's enough fertilizer available, etc., just because of one decision that was taken 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let us just be very clear how things can change, or go back to 2020 when COVID struck. We took one decision, lockdown, finished, end of story, no discussion. Boom, this is what India is doing now, and we came through, right? Now, if we are in 2047 a developed nation and cannot feed 1.7 billion people nutritiously, I think we're not a developed nation. And that's a little bit where I think we have an opportunity, and it starts with FPOs. Yeah? And it starts with saying, okay, and these FPOs actually have a purpose. This FPO is going to be producing corn for silage for animal fodder. Yeah? And that doesn't mean we become a communist country and say, you know, this is defined by government. It is defined by science, because that is the best crop to grow here at this point in time, because soil moisture, water availability, etc., lends itself to it. And there's people who are having cattle or having whatever it is, poultry, and need feed within the vicinity. And that's what is best for the economy of this area. Yeah? And if you grow rice, I'm going to tax you through the nose, so you don't do it, because it just doesn't make sense to grow rice here. Grow it where it makes sense, please. Yeah? And that is a little bit where a national agricultural policy will have to come in. Yeah? It's great to say it's a state-level thing, but in the end, India is too big, too diverse, and has too many opportunities because of the agroclimatic zones to optimize growing food for the country.
They had suggested one district, one product,
Yes.
but that stopped.
Yeah,
That didn't work out, because it's something like this. In a place called Kolar, which is nearby here, they grow tomatoes, because the tomato, by the time they sow the crop, fetches a lot of money. But when they harvest, they throw it into the streets, because we do not have industry to support the kind of processing that can be done.
But this is where we're back to what he said. Thailand was the country that started with one taluka, one product, or whatever. I don't remember what they called it exactly.
One district, one product.
One district, one product. But then they made a real marketing campaign out of it. Yeah? And you could only get this, I mean, start with Alfonso mangoes. Where do they come from, right? Yeah? So you have this geographic origin discussion. You need to have that. You need to knock it in and say, you know what, capsicum from Karnataka, from Bengaluru area, they have a geographic origin, and they're also the only ones that can be sold as Karnataka capsicum.
They have such things.
You cannot do it in Guntur. Forget about it.
Professor Sheshaji, but you know, in this country, farming and agriculture is politically a very, very sensitive issue.
It is very sensitive.
I think more governments have fallen on the issue of agriculture and farming in this country.
Recently, there was a farmer's bill. Nobody understood the farmer's bill. What I understand is, there were some people outside, like middlemen, who will buy it from Punjab and sell it in Bihar. And when they sell it in Bihar, they sell it to the price that they want. But the farmer will have to only give it to some places which the government prescribes. This government said, not necessary. You can give it to whomever you want, which also means the FPO can take that and go to Bihar himself and sell what the middleman was doing. And the entire world went on strike. Nobody understood why. And this is the problem with us. They are gullible people. I understand that the farmer, our students keep saying that the farmer is very intelligent, he knows everything. I don't agree with that, because poor person, like you said, I know this particular new technology has come, but my grandparents have taught me this is how I should do. I will do that only. He is so resistant to change because we have not demonstrated to them. So we need to demonstrate, convince them, and I think then bring about these changes. Anything rapidly done. But what he says is correct. Put a foot down and tell, like how we did it in COVID time, either you grow rice or nothing at all. Or you grow paddy, ragi or something like that, and nothing at all. We can't do that. Unfortunately, democratically, that will be bad, and the people will be, they will go on unrest, and all that nonsense will happen in India.
But guys, what is the biggest budget position of the European Union? Agriculture.
What's that?
Agriculture. Why do you think that's the case? because it's the same, right? I mean, we in India hide behind we're a democracy and farmers are important. How did Trump win in the United States? He won by farmer votes. If he doesn't get the farmer votes, any US president who doesn't get farmer votes will not become US president. It's that simple, right? So while I appreciate, and it's 100% true, it is not unique. This is a global phenomenon.
Okay.
Right? It's a global phenomenon, this agriculture, because in the end, what is the most sustainable business in the world?
But Simon, I've also seen in the...
Give me the answer. What is the most sustainable business in the world?
Agriculture.
Agriculture, exactly. Because that's the only business that has been around. It sustains our humanity.
I mean, there are 2-3 things that I can tell. You know, I visited one farm in the United States. That man had 10,000 hectares of land, which is huge. You know, he doesn't know which is the other end. And I asked him the same question, like, what do you do? You know, an elderly person, what do you do when you go? And I'm not going anywhere. But my son, my son's wife, my daughter and her husband, all of us are doing the same thing. No fragmentation there. Most of the farms have remained like that because they live in the same farm. When you have 10,000 hectares, 1 hectare of land you take and build a different house, what's the problem? That's the situation in India. Is half an acre and you build a house there, you have nothing else to grow. So,
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. And when we started the discussion, I didn't know that we are getting towards and agriculture can lead to such an engaging dialogue. But nonetheless, thank you all very much, all the panelists here, for finding time and joining us today.
Thank you for having us.